Adrienne Kennedy's Funnyhouse of Negro was written and first produced in the 1960s, a period of significant social and political change in the United States. The main story of Adrienne Kennedy's play, Funnyhouse of Negro, revolves around the central character, Sarah, a young African-American woman in her 20s. The play is a deeply introspective exploration of Sarah's internal struggles with her racial identity and her place in a racially divided society. While the narrative is surreal and symbolic, it primarily follows Sarah's psychological journey. Throughout the play, Sarah grapples with feelings of self-hatred and confusion regarding her racial heritage. She is of mixed race, with an African mother and a white father, and she struggles to reconcile these conflicting aspects of her identity. Sarah's isolation in her apartment, which she calls the Funnyhouse, serves as a metaphor for her emotional and psychological isolation. The play incorporates dreamlike and symbolic elements, including the presence of historical and mythical figures like the Duchess of Habsburg, Patrice Lumumba, Queen Victoria, and Jesus Christ. These characters interact with Sarah in her dreams and fantasies, representing the external and internal forces that shape her sense of self. Throughout the play, Sarah's journey is one of self-discovery and self-acceptance. She confronts her own inner demons, societal pressures, and the complex legacy of colonialism. The play challenges conventional notions of racial identity and beauty standards while delving into the profound psychological impact of racism. Civil rights movement. The 1960s was a crucial time for the civil rights movement, which aimed to end racial segregation and discrimination against African Americans. Activists like Martin Luther King Jr. were leading marches, protests, and advocating for equal rights. Racial tensions were high during this period, due to the ongoing struggle for civil rights. The play reflects the complexities of race and identity during this turbulent time. Vietnam War. The U.S. was deeply involved in the Vietnam War. During the 1960s, the war had a profound impact on American society, leading to protests and social unrest. Cultural shifts. The 1960s saw a cultural revolution, with the rise of the counterculture, the hippie movement, and the sexual revolution. It was a time of questioning traditional norms and values. Assassinations. The decade was marked by the assassinations of prominent figures, including President John F. Kennedy in 1963 and civil rights leader Malcolm X in 1965. Women's rights. The feminist movement gained momentum in the 1960s, advocating for women's equality and reproductive rights. Artistic and theatrical experimentation. The 1960s also saw experimentation in the arts, including theater. Playwrights like Adrienne Kennedy challenged traditional theatrical forms and tackled pressing social issues. Racial identity and self-perception. The play delves deeply into the protagonist Sarah's struggle with her racial identity. Sarah is of mixed race, and she grapples with feelings of self-hatred and confusion regarding her heritage. The play raises questions about how individuals perceive themselves in a society that often defines them based on their racial background. Colonialism and cultural heritage. The presence of a white colonialist figure, the Duchess of Habsburg, and her confrontations with Sarah symbolize the impact of colonialism on African American identity. The play explores the influence of European culture and history on African American identity and how it can be both alluring and oppressive. Isolation and alienation. Sarah's isolation in her Funnyhouse, her apartment, and her inability to connect with others due to her internal struggles highlight themes of loneliness and alienation. This isolation serves as a metaphor for the isolation experienced by marginalized individuals in a racially divided society. Surrealism and symbolism. The play's dreamlike and surreal elements, such as the floating roses and the paper mask, contribute to a sense of disorientation and ambiguity. These symbols are open to interpretation and add to the overall complexity of the narrative. The legacy of slavery. The play indirectly addresses the enduring legacy of slavery and its impact on African American identity. Sarah's internal conflicts and the presence of historical figures suggest the ongoing effects of this dark chapter in American history. Race and beauty standards. Sarah's obsession with white beauty standards and her desire for lighter skin reflect the societal pressures and standards imposed on African American women. This theme explores how beauty ideals can shape one's self-esteem and self-worth. Historical and cultural references. The play incorporates historical and cultural references, such as the figures of Queen Victoria, Patrice Lumumba, and Jesus Christ. These references contribute to the play's exploration of history, culture, and the interconnectedness of different narratives. Sarah. Sarah is the central character of the play. A young African-American woman in her 20s. She grapples with a complex and conflicted racial identity. Feeling alienated from both her African and European heritage, Sarah's internal struggles and journey of self-discovery drive the narrative. Her character symbolizes the broader theme of racial identity and self-perception. The Duchess of Habsburg. The Duchess is a white colonialist figure who appears in Sarah's dreams and fantasies. She represents the oppressive legacy of colonialism and European culture's influence on African American identity. The Duchess's presence challenges Sarah's sense of self and her connection to her African roots. Patrice Lumumba. Patrice Lumumba, a historical figure and the first Prime Minister of the Congo, appears in the play. His inclusion highlights the impact of African history and the struggle for independence on the African American psyche. His character reflects themes of colonization and resistance. Queen Victoria. Queen Victoria, a historical figure, is also a part of Sarah's dreamscape. She represents European royalty and colonial power. Her presence underscores the historical and cultural references woven into the play. Jesus Christ. The character of Jesus Christ appears briefly in the play. He serves as a symbol of religious and spiritual themes, adding a layer of complexity to the narrative. The Negro, a composite character. This character represents a stereotype or societal expectation of what it means to be a Negro. In the context of the play, this character embodies the external pressures and expectations placed on individuals based on their race. The white roses. The large, glossy white roses that float into Sarah's room symbolize both beauty and danger. They are beautiful and enticing, but their sheer size and the way they invade her space suggest a sense of suffocation and unease. They represent the complex relationship between beauty ideals and racial identity. The paper mask. The paper mask of a screaming white face, held up by a small black girl, is a striking and unsettling image. It symbolizes the societal pressure for conformity to white standards of beauty and behavior. It also highlights the performative aspect of identity, where individuals may feel compelled to wear a mask to fit in or be accepted. Sarah's apartment. Funnyhouse. Sarah's apartment serves as a symbol of her isolation and internal turmoil. It is a place where she grapples with her racial identity and confronts her own inner demons. The apartment's name, Funnyhouse, suggests the distortion and complexity of her identity. The Duchess of Habsburg. The Duchess symbolizes the legacy of European colonialism and its impact on African American identity. Her character represents both the allure and oppression of European culture, and her interactions with Sarah reflect the struggle for self-identity in the face of historical and cultural forces. The mirror and reflections. Mirrors and reflections are used throughout the play to convey Sarah's self-examination and her struggle with self-perception. They reflect the internal conflict she experiences regarding her racial identity. The Negro character. This character symbolizes societal stereotypes and expectations placed on African Americans. It highlights the external pressures and judgments individuals face based on their race. Surrealism and Symbolism. The title Funnyhouse of Negro immediately signals to the audience that they are entering a surreal and symbolic world. It prepares viewers for the dreamlike and allegorical nature of the play, where reality is blurred and symbols carry deep meaning. Exploration of racial identity. The term Negro in the title is deliberate, as it was commonly used during the period when the play was written 1960s, but has since fallen out of favor. It draws attention to the central theme of racial identity and the protagonist Sarah's struggle with her own Racial background. The ambiguity of humor and tragedy. The word Funnyhouse creates a sense of ambiguity. It can be interpreted as a place of humor, but within the context of the play. It also represents a space of deep, internal conflict and tragedy. This juxtaposition captures the complexity of the play's themes. Challenging conventions. The title challenges conventional theater norms. By using provocative language, it invites viewers to question their preconceptions and expectations about race, identity, and storytelling in the theater. Memorability. The title is distinctive and memorable, making it stand out in the realm of theater and literature. It piques curiosity and encourages audiences to explore the play's deeper layers of meaning.